Happy New Year, everybody. It's 2024, which means it's time for what we like to call the Goggler Podcast 2023 Wrapped.
Not one of your better ones.
We're coming at this a little late, but that's because we wanted to wait until we had seen everything that December had to offer, because there were some late releases, like What If, for example, which came out Christmas week all the way to New Year's Eve. Even the Malaysian movie Pendatang. We were hoping for some pleasant surprises before we went into our lists of best and worst and favorites and what we're most looking forward to in 2024. I have to say, despite all of the chaos of 2023, it was a pretty great year for movies. When we were putting together our best of lists for television and film, it just made me realize how much good stuff there actually was. Because oftentimes, as you're going through the year, there's so much noise, just whinging about how cinema and television is not what it used to be. And everyone kind of gets caught up in the moment of this one thing that they dislike or really like, and then actually don't consider the year as a whole. It's only when we reach December and we look back and we go, oh, wait, there was a whole bunch of stuff that I really, really enjoyed in 2023.
The other problem as well is when you're pulling together these lists, there's something to be mindful of is the recency bias, right? Like everything you saw in December was the best or the worst. I mean, we keep a list of the things we watched throughout the year, and my feature film list now stands at 130.
Yeah.
My TV is about 200, I think.
On average, I think we try to, or we end up watching at least a movie or a TV show a day, minimum. Occasionally, it ends up being more because the weekends tend to get pretty busy with us watching stuff with our wives.
These are only pieces of content that we are considering for work. So How I Met Your Mother rewatch doesn't go into this list.
If we sit down one weekend and decide to rewatch the Lord of the Rings trilogy,
which we did,
it doesn't go back on this list, right?
Does not count on this list.
This is generally new stuff that we're watching, either recently released or that we're watching for the first time. So how we decided to do this was we went away and we had a little homework, and we thought we'd put together a list of our biggest surprises, our biggest disappointments, our favorite TV shows and movies, and what we're most looking forward to in 2024. Now, if you want a comprehensive list of our best selections, then they're on our Instagram page and our social media. You can go look for it there. I think it goes without saying that when we say our individual favorite TV shows or movies, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing that was made. It could just be the thing that moved us the most or that we enjoyed the most.
Yes.
Because we can write 800 words on why Flower Moon is technically proficient and Scorsese is a fantastic director, but it may not necessarily be our favorite movie, if you get what I mean.
There's a lot of caveats to this, and I think that's the only way you can approach a best of list of anything. It's not a technical thing. It's more of a, did I, Bahir, the person, like this thing?
I think that's what a lot of people miss when they talk about film and television, which is why on the internet you see all of these incredibly drastic reactions to things. But different movies, like all art, affects different people differently. You could be in a place in your life where something speaks to you in a certain way that wouldn't affect you or me in the same way.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to point out. And I think that's why so many films that we watch as young people stick with us for such a long period of time. And I think that's why you can say, oh my God, Titanic is my favorite movie of all time, barring no other.
And you wouldn't be wrong.
No, you wouldn't be wrong.
Yeah, because it's your favorite movie. It might not be mine, and that's fine. I will fight you on Justice League, though.
It's very rare that things are objectively rubbish, like Rebel Moon. The one thing we're not talking about in this podcast are our worst movies of 2023.
I've got a sneak peek for you, that one.
Have you got a sneak peek? I mean, I've got a couple rattling around in my brain.
I've stuck one in.
And I think we may line up on this, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
This is as much as a surprise to you, the audience, as it is for each of us, because we haven't shared our lists.
All right. Let's start with biggest surprise for us of 2023.
Okay.
For me, the biggest surprise was Oppenheimer making $1 billion at the box office.
Yeah.
Now, Nolan movies do well, but never that well. The only ones that tend to do that well are the superhero films that he did, namely Batman.
Yeah.
Breaking $1 billion is a hard thing to do, let alone for a 3-hour talky film.
Yes.
Being 3 hours is already a hindrance because it means less screenings in a day. They did have the benefit of having premium screens like IMAX and exclusivity periods for IMAX screenings. Premium screens, if everyone goes and watches it in IMAX, that tends to bring in a lot of money. And of course, the Oppenheimer marketing machine was very good in one respect. And that was, oh my God, it's Nolan. He shoots everything in IMAX. You need to watch this in IMAX because it's an experience. And that worked. But hitting 1 billion, I did not expect.
I remember us talking to the distributors and sort of trying to temper their expectations, because it's not something we thought was going to happen, right? Again, it's a 3 plus hour talkie. Some of it's in black and white. It was a stretch for a lot of people. Just, again, like you said, just timing wise, you will have less screens in a day. And that just means that you either have to run it for longer, charge more money, or just hope people constantly sell out. And what has happened is all three things.
The Barbenheimer phenomenon helped greatly because in the lead up to
absolutely.
the film, the Oppenheimer marketing was absolutely terrible. Like, all they did was just release photos of Cillian Murphy looking sad. The trailer was a bit art house and didn't tell you anything. And so the marketing of the movie was really just left out there to die. Partly because I don't think Universal knew how to sell this movie. When Nolan was with Warner Brothers, I don't think they knew how to sell any of his movies either. When you think about Inception or Tenet, it's always a problem with Nolan movies because it's not the kind of thing that you can distill into a 2-minute trailer or a 6-word catchphrase.
Yes, yeah.
That said, the Barbenheimer phenomenon was interesting. I think it helped. I think people were doing those double bills. It was a long time since people had a double bill of original content in the cinema that wasn't a superhero movie or part of an existing franchise. However, I still think to hit $1 billion, it meant people were watching this movie multiple times.
I mean, how many times did you watch it?
I'd rather not say.
Okay. Yeah. So that in itself is worthy of the film sort of reaching the canon that it is going to be reaching. Yeah, it's going to go down as a big year for Nolan. He's won his first Golden Globe. Probably gonna get something for the Oscars.
I think it's going to be his year at the Oscars.
You think so?
I think so. I think he's been, in inverted commas, snubbed for far too long.
I don't know if he's been snubbed. I feel like none of his films prior to this would probably really deserve that kind of recognition.
I was going to say, I think people call it snubbery. However, like, I think Dark Knight was nominated, and I think that was a little bit of a gimme because I think that also was nominated on the first year that they did 10 movies for Best Picture.
I think so.
You're right. Oppenheimer feels like Oscar bait in that sense.
Yeah.
And so this might be his year. But yeah, that was my biggest surprise. Oppenheimer reaching $1 billion at the global box office. Wow.
I just stuck to like film releases, and honestly, my biggest surprise of 2023 was La Luna. I did not see that one coming. I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of the director prior, and because mostly he works out of Singapore, so that's fine. But I was absolutely like flabbergasted at how accomplished that film was, how the writing was so tight, how the acting was so tight, how he was able to deftly touch on certain sensitivities without annoying anybody, while at the same time still being able to discuss those topics. The director Raihan was able to sort of really put together a feature film that is enjoyable, that was a lot of fun, that was very, very good. I keep trying to tell filmmaker friends, before you worry about how to shoot a car chase sequence, can you shoot two people having a conversation? You know? And La Luna had multiple two people conversations that didn't bore me, that didn't make me cringe, that didn't annoy me. And that was for me my one big surprise for the year.
No, I agree. I think it's one of my favorite movies of the year. Not just favorite Malaysian movie of the year,
Yeah.
but also of any movie. No, La Luna was a real achievement and a real
Yeah.
accomplishment. And I think more people need to watch it. I don't know if they have a scheduled streaming
Oh,
release
that one
yet.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
But when it does get released, we will definitely let you know. And you have to watch it if you haven't already. I don't think it made much money at the box office. It's like Tiga Janda, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those movies where everyone thinks, oh, I'll catch it on TV. But that would be your first mistake, because besides being a very well written, well made, well told story, La Luna also feels cinematic because it was shot beautifully and it was shot for the big screen. It wasn't shot to be watched on your iPhone.
And I think the problem with that sentiment of I'll watch it later is that you're not giving the director or the filmmakers their due. When you watch it later and then you tweet about it, all it's gonna tell the filmmaker is that you were too cheap to do it in the cinema. Like
Yeah.
and I get that. Money's tight, things are expensive, but
But that's why you have us. That's why you have us to tell you this is worth your 15 ringgit.
that's true. Yeah. So I've got a second biggest surprise.
Oh,
But this is on the opposite side of the spectrum. Anwar the Untold Story.
that would be my pick for worst movie of the year. But carry on.
The surprise is that I can't believe somebody was able to pull this together and release it and it be so bad.
You're right.
It's just like on a filmmaking level, it's terrible. On a storytelling level, it's terrible. From a filmmaking technical point of view, it's terrible. That was my biggest surprise about Anwar the Untold Story, that it is so bad. How did this get made?
I mean, there's a certain level of technical proficiency, more so given that the movie was made in Indonesia, which has a high level of technical proficiency when it comes to filmmaking. But it feels like they got all of the amateurs that aren't making the good stuff that ends up on Netflix.
Just the fact that the Indonesian actors and actresses were speaking in Indonesian and not Bahasa, or at least speaking with an Indonesian accent, not even really successfully trying to hide their Indonesian accent. I completely grant that they are much better actors and performers than Malaysians, but my point is, work that out. You're telling the story of a real Malaysian person and his real Malaysian family. Maybe not have them speak with an Indonesian accent.
For me, what was most interesting about the release of Anwar the Untold Story was how much of a reflection it was on how immature our discourse still is, right? Because if you
Yes.
don't like the movie, it means you're suddenly against Anwar the person.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, let me tell you, after watching that movie, Anwar himself would be against Anwar the person.
Funny you should say that, because I know some family friends of his, and even they were saying that was terrible.
There you go.
They were saying bad things about the film, because aside from the fact that it wasn't entirely accurate, the problem is the film was so dripping with, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's easy. The film was made by someone who was hoping to curry favor with Anwar. And so it feels like that kind of crony filmmaking.
Yeah.
I doubt
Yeah.
Anwar or his family had anything to do with the movie, but for the most part, for someone to make something that is so steeped in propaganda and ass kissing, it has to be someone who wants to curry favor with the prime minister, because you're watching it and you're thinking, no, none of this is actually real. It feels like a hagiography of the worst kind.
That was the word I was looking for. And even then, even all of that aside, it's just so badly done. The movie jumps around constantly. There's no real timeline associated with the film. They tried to recreate infamous slash famous imagery and then still get it wrong because the people in the image are wrong. It's like, what are you doing, my friend? That was to me the biggest surprise. Well, the worst biggest surprise.
But what was your biggest disappointment of 2023? Now, when we say this, obviously, for something to be a massive disappointment, there must have been some expectation upon
Yes.
it in the first place.
Yes.
So we went in with a certain amount of expectation and we left going, what the fuck was that?
You want mine first? You want to go first?
Okay, let me go first. Mine
Okay, you go first.
is Secret Invasion.
Oh.
I love the comics. I was very excited about this because obviously it was Sam Jackson's big major return to the MCU. And also because it started off so incredibly well. And those first few episodes felt like they were making this Cold War spy thriller type thing.
Yeah.
And I thought for a second, I was like, oh, look, Marvel's realized that they were most successful when they were doing these genre pieces within the superhero universe and superhero storytelling. And
Yeah.
this could be something really, really cool. And then at the end of 6 episodes, it completely goes off the rails and ends up being the shittest thing they have ever made.
Yeah.
Like the last episode has one of the worst Mexican standoffs ever. It just goes on for so long and no one fucking shoots anybody when they should have shot someone within the first 10 seconds of it happening.
I think for us, the worst part of that experience was the fact that we saw the first 2 episodes early.
Yes.
Was it the first 2 episodes?
two
They
or
gave us
three,
the first
I
2 or the
think.
first 3 episodes, yeah. And we were so jazzed about it. We were so pumped. And then we saw the rest of the episodes and it just kept stumbling. I just kept sitting there going, what the hell's going on right now?
It's really like they were writing it on the fly and had absolutely no idea how they were going to end this thing. It was awful.
I was half expecting an immediate announcement for a second season because I was like, this can't be how this show ends. This can't be it. There has to be a surprise. Actually, there's a season 2 where we will fix all of this.
No, instead, there was the Marvels where they pretended like none of it
none
even
of it
happened.
Yeah, that was great. Just like Sam Jackson's never been on Earth again. Yeah, it's just like, okay, cool. All right. And
Move along.
my biggest disappointment was actually Asteroid City.
Oh.
Oh.
You know what's interesting?
What's interesting?
I still haven't seen it.
Oh.
I have it. I bought it because it wasn't
Yep.
released in Malaysia. I'm
Yep.
assuming because there was stuff to censor and Wes Anderson did not want to censor anything.
There's one sequence.
Right. So I bought it and it's been sitting in my iTunes account. But I don't know why I haven't had the mood. And normally I would because one, it's a Wes Anderson movie and the cast is absolutely fucking stacked.
And I just, wow. I saw it 3 times while I was on the plane.
Oh.
Admittedly, I don't do well on planes, but I kept falling asleep. I just kept getting bored. I kept zoning out. I kept having to go back and going, wait, what did I miss? Because I just kept losing the plot literally. My biggest problem with the film was that none of the charm of what you would expect from a Wes Anderson film. There's no heart, there's no charm. Like, I much preferred the Netflix stuff he did, the shorts he did for Netflix. That was full of just like little cute, beautiful things. And Asteroid City just feels like somebody else doing a Wes Anderson approximation, being a perfect approximation of a Wes Anderson film, but none of the heart of a Wes Anderson film.
Which is ironic because Asteroid City was released at a time when everyone was doing the TikTok and Instagram trend of channeling life as Wes Anderson.
It's not that the film is weird, it's that the film just, for me, it just didn't tell me a thing. I don't know if you know this, but suddenly aliens, and it's like, what? There was too many things going on with too little things going on.
Huh.
Unlike what he did with
The French Dispatch?
The French Dispatch, where the film is broken up into these 4 or 5 short story segments, right? Here, those short story segments all have the same character. They're all intertwined. So they never really develop or deliver anything, I felt. So my biggest disappointment was Asteroid City.
What was your favorite TV show? Do you want to do this together? Because I think it might be the same one. Do you want to say it on 3?
Okay.
All right.
Let's
try
try.
this. I mean, we have had
Okay.
absolutely no discussion prior to this. So,
Yes,
All right.
none at all.
On
Zero.
three
Yeah.
or after three?
After 3.
After three. Okay.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Deadlock.
Yay!
Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay, moving on.
Right.
We
yeah,
have
yeah.
we have 2 podcasts about Deadlock, so it's okay. We can.
If you want to know more about why we love Deadlock, go check it out. We interviewed the creators
Yeah.
and we did our review. But mostly, in a nutshell, it was genuinely great. Also, one of the biggest surprises of the year for us, and just something so smart and clever. It felt unlike anything we'd ever seen before.
Yes, it's a pitch perfect Australian version of a Scandinois. And if you know
Yes.
anything about Australians, it means that they're vulgar, they're a little loud, they're a little funny, but the Scandinois is all there. Do you have a list of your favorite TV? Do you have like a top 3?
I do actually. I think my favorite TV shows, I mean, apart from Deadlock, I think The Last of Us is right up there. It's just one of the best things I've seen all year. It was one of the first things we saw in 2023.
Yes.
And I think it stayed in my consciousness because normally the reason Bahir and I make these lists every year, like we start with a shared note because we forget. We see so much stuff that we forget what was great, what was good. So we make a list and then we actually have a tick box where we go best of the year. So we remember, right? I didn't need, like every time I was writing out a list, The Last of Us was the first thing I wrote down. And then the other thing I really loved was Poker Face.
Okay.
Because I grew up watching Columbo and I love murder mysteries. And I think what Ryan Johnson did with Poker Face and the way he kind of channeled that classic television murder mystery. And Natasha Lyonne is just like, oh my God, she's so good in it. Those were probably my top 3.
Mine would be The Bear. And honestly, The Bear is only because of that one episode called Forks.
Cousins episode.
I that to me is just the best episode. So I love The Bear. And I found myself always constantly itching for more episodes of Silo, the Apple TV show. I couldn't wait for the next episode, right? Even though we have screener access, I don't want to ruin it for myself. So I waited every week for the new episodes to show up.
It's a good show.
It's a great show. Like Silo was that one for me.
Can I just say, Apple TV and science fiction is just knocking it out
It's
of the
synonymous
park.
now.
It's really good.
weird.
Yeah.
But it's weird at how Apple TV has become almost what the sci-fi channel should have been because they were called the sci-fi
Right?
channel.
Like you've got
Yeah.
For All Mankind, you've got Silo, you've got Foundation. This year there's a show coming out called Constellation, which sounds really, really cool. They're doing science fiction very, very well.
Hello Tomorrow.
Hello Tomorrow.
My top 3 would be Deadlock, The Bear, Silo. I have a lot of love for 1923.
I also have a lot of love for Shrinking.
Oh yeah, I had a lot of fun with that.
Favorite movie of 2023?
Okay.
Like we've got our best of list, and the best of list that we have on Instagram is a kind of a joint list of all the movies we love. There are, I think, 10 or 13 on that list. I can't remember what it is now. But what was your favorite film cinema experience of 2023?
Not cinema, but one that I find myself trying to get more people to watch. Argentina 1985.
Such a great movie.
I agree with our list, like Oppenheimer, Killers, absolutely great. But they're movies people have heard of,
Right.
you know, and they've avoided for one reason or another. Whereas Argentina 1985 is a fantastic film that I think people haven't even heard of. And I want people to hear about it and go watch it.
Yes.
So for me, Argentina 1985, based on a true story, there is such pace to the movie. There is such intensity in that film. The political lawyer thing, it's just beautiful.
It's also a movie that I think many Malaysians can relate to on a political level.
Yes,
Obviously,
very
our
familiar.
political situation in Malaysia isn't as extreme as what went on in Argentina, but there are enough threads with regards to how the justice system works or doesn't that I think we can relate to. The reason it wasn't on our list is because it was an early 2022 film.
Was it 2022?
It was, because it was nominated for Best International Feature at the 2023 Oscars. It showed up on Prime Video in 2023.
Yeah, we saw it early 23.
But you're right, when we were making our 2022 lists, it wasn't out and we had no access to it.
Argentina 1985, I was going to add Air,
Great film.
and still, Michael J. Fox documentary.
That movie made me cry more than any movie should.
I know, but yeah.
It's awful in that sense.
Yes.
Like within the first 10 minutes, I was weeping. My wife walks into the room. It's like, what's wrong? I'm like, you don't understand.
The thing about Still is that you, the audience, are feeling very sad. But him, the subject, isn't.
No.
He is having the time of his life. But you are just so sad for him.
He's come to a certain level of acceptance that we have not. If you have grown up watching Michael J. Fox, then you haven't yet come to the acceptance that his life is at an end, an unnatural end because of this debilitating disease, right? But I think what makes that movie so great is that it gives you a real insight into Parkinson's.
And also a real insight into Michael J. Fox, the man. Again, you're talking about an acceptance, and it's not just the subject sitting there saying, I've accepted this. It's the filmmaker showing you the subject has accepted this because he stumbles down the stairs and he makes fun of himself.
Also, just a genius piece of documentary filmmaking, right? Just
Oh, yeah.
using footage from all of J. Fox's TV shows and films to tell his story and recutting it in this clever way. Because obviously, the only way that we know the man is through those things.
Yeah.
And then connecting the characters to the actual guy himself. It's just really smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
My favorite movie or cinematic experience of the year is an obvious one. It's Across the Spider-Verse. I don't think anything blew me away as much as that.
The only reason I kept that off my list is because
of
it's part two.
Yeah.
There's a third movie that I want to take it as a whole.
You say that, but I think as a work in itself, I just think it's one of the most accomplished pieces of cinema that I've seen in a very long time. Music, writing, just the ability to make us connect to these characters. And I'm not just talking about Miles and Gwen. I'm talking about new characters that you don't know from Adam. And yet, the ability to make you connect with the Spot.
Yeah.
A tier 3 villain. A B, C, D grade villain.
I think tier 3 is a little high. But
in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and making him vicious and evil and kind of cool. It's very, very smart writing.
But also motivated. All of those things, his villainy is motivated. It's not just that he woke up one day and he had this thing and he decides to rob banks. No, it's motivated.
If you rewatch this film, he's not in it a lot, but his presence is there throughout. It's very, very clever. But yes, I mean, also Oppenheimer. I saw Oppenheimer more than any other movie I saw this year. I mean, Across the Spider-Verse comes close, but I think Oppenheimer beats it by one viewing.
Oh, shucks.
Oh, shucks. Also, a late entry to my list was The Holdovers, which is being released in Malaysian cinemas on January 25th. I've always been a big fan of Alexander Payne. The Holdovers is one of the finest films I've seen any year.
Interesting.
The writing, Paul Giamatti, just as a bonus in The Holdovers, there is a scene where Paul Giamatti finds a shitty Christmas tree for the students left over at the university, and they play Vince Giraldi. But you know what?
Oh.
That has nothing to do with why I love the movie as much.
Oh, man.
But yes, the reference was very appreciated. But yeah, The Holdovers, Oppenheimer, Across the Spider-Verse, probably my top 3 of 2023.
It's a fairly adult list we've got going.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, La Luna's up there as well. And, you know, all of the movies, which is why we didn't rank them. Like, even last year when we did a best of 2022, we didn't rank these movies because I feel ranking them is kind of pointless. Like, from 10 to 1, like, what makes 10 the worst of the best and all of that stuff. And they're also different, our selections. But I think the movies that we enjoyed most had a great time in the cinema. They added something to the cinematic conversation. I think all of those kind of play a part when we are selecting a film, but also I think it really boils down to how it makes us feel.
That's why, for me at least, something like Abang Adik didn't make the list, only because in a real sort of juvenile way, I wasn't in the right place to enjoy that film. I loved it. I thought it was completely accomplished. I thought all the actors were perfect. I just felt like I was already on holiday and it didn't resonate with me. I think that was the thing.
And rightly so. I mean, that's why people release movies the way they do when they do, right? All of that is strategic timing. If you are in a holiday state of mind, honestly, the last thing you want to do is weep uncontrollably in a cinema over the sad life of undocumented Malaysians.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get that. I totally get that. And I think it's really important when you watch certain movies. The timing does affect your experience.
Yeah.
I'm going to try watching Asteroid City because I found as well that I have a different experience watching movies on planes.
Yeah.
And I come away sometimes with a different takeaway. And so I'm going to try and watch it on the ground and see if I feel any different.
The problem is because I had such a bad experience with it, I cannot bring myself to go back and watch it.
I get that. Yeah.
You know,
I get
like maybe if you watch it and you tell me I'm wrong, then sure, I might go back at it. But
I'll give it a shot.
give it a shot.
Very quickly, things we're most looking forward to in 2024. Now, of course, none of this is set in stone because the writer's strikes have kind of messed things up. And so the first 6 months of 2024 are going to be relatively quiet in comparison to previous years because obviously movies that were in production and that were scheduled to be released in January, February, March have now been pushed to later in the year. You have the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe undergoing a kind of rejig, and so they're changing their entire strategy with regards to TV releases and movie releases. So there's a lot of things going on in Hollywood.
But also, we obviously don't know what's going to come out. We know of the big titles that have been announced. We don't know what's going to happen in November 2024.
Obviously, they haven't announced all of the A24 indie releases. All of that comes later. Some of that may never come to Malaysia. But of the ones that we know, this is what we're most looking forward to.
My list is made up of the heavy hitters, right? Dune 2, Ghostbusters, Deadpool 3, Furiosa. The one I thought I'd never have to say, Gladiator 2.
Same. It's been over 2 decades. I didn't think I'd ever have to say that as well.
But it's also just because I'm curious as to what he's going to do with it, right? Beetlejuice 2, big fan of that. For me, it will be something like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. The Planet of the Apes series, this new prequel series, has just been constant sleeper hits for me. They're not something I'm excited for, and then I watch it and I go, this shit is amazing. Also, this one I had not heard of at all, The War of the Rohirrim.
Oh, that's
The animated feature.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, the prequel. And I'm like, that sounds great.
So all of those things are on my list. The only thing I would add is Megalopolis, which is supposed to come out this year, which is the Francis Ford Coppola film.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
He did say 2024.
We'll see.
And I'm just curious to see if Coppola still has it. And also, this is a movie that he's financed entirely by himself.
Yep.
And I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could mean that it's pure self-indulgence. But sometimes when a director employs a certain amount of self-restraint, it could end up being great because there is absolutely no studio interference. Either that or, you get financed by Netflix because they clearly don't give a shit what you put out.
I always bristle a little bit at the idea of studio interference as a negative thing.
I think it can work both ways, actually.
I admit I'm coming to filmmaking purely from the producer point of view, so that's kind of my jam. But I feel like if you're a good producer and or executive, I think you can add value.
I agree.
I'm a big Bob Evans guy. So
I totally agree. I think Zack Snyder could use with a lot more interference.
I think Zack Snyder could have used some Bob Evans magic, but sure.
I think maybe David Fincher a little less.
Yes.
I would love to see what his Alien would have been like if not for studio interference.
I would just put that down to being, it was that time in Hollywood.
That time in Hollywood, also he was young and new and fresh.
I think the executives above him, who are all probably accountants and financiers anyway, didn't want to give their golden goose off to this young upstart who was not replying their phone messages or whatever, right? So I get it. I think Megalopolis is, from the little I've read, it sounds really exciting.
And then the other one that I'd add to that list is Mickey 17, which is the new Bong Joon-ho film. I never know what kind of movie Bong Joon-ho is going to put out, because if you look at his filmography, they are all so drastically different from one another. I'm ready to be surprised and I'm excited at that notion. For TV, one that we just discovered a few days ago, Monsieur Spade, is something that I'm really, really looking forward to.
That's just. I don't even know what to start.
Yeah, it's a brand new Sam Spade series with Clive Owen. I'm like, what? Let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah. My reaction to it is about the same as when I heard they were making a Perry Mason TV show.
And you know what? All you fuckers didn't watch Perry Mason and then they cancelled it at season 2. And it's a great show. You should have been watching it.
I blame each and every one.
Each and every one of you.
TV, I would have to say Shogun.
Same. Basically, all of the shows that are coming out, right, on my list. Shogun, because I'm a huge James Clavell fan. Noble House, Shogun.
That's one of the few books I've read. So
I watched the TV adaptations of those growing up because they had those adaptations that were always shown on our television as well. Also, another book adaptation on Apple TV, Manhunt.
Oh.
Which is the search for Abraham Lincoln Shooter, John Wilkes Booth.
Oh, wow.
And I read that book ages ago, and I think it was supposed to be a Spielberg movie. And then he ended up making other things, and now it's a TV series on Apple TV Plus, and I'm very excited about that.
I want to add 2 more. Well, 3 more. Fallout on Prime Video. I was going to add The Jinx Part 2.
Hell yes.
Because what?
Apparently, the Jinx Part 2 is going to look into his potential accomplices.
Oh.
I know. I'm like, what? Robert Durst had accomplices?
Just a quick 20 seconds. The Jinx, Robert Durst, son of a real estate magnate, I think, really rich, accused of murdering his wife. And during the course of the making of this documentary, right at the end of the documentary, he says to himself, while being hot on mic in the toilet, well, they've caught you. You got to watch The Jinx because The Jinx Part 2 is coming out. My other one is The Franchise, also a series on HBO. Armando Iannucci, who I'm a big fan of. I'm a massive fan of Armando Iannucci. Executive produced by Sam Mendes and Park Chan-wook. What?
How those 3 people came together should be a story in itself.
But The Franchise is about the behind-the-scenes making of a superhero blockbuster film and how it all goes to shit in the Armando Iannucci sort of way.
I am looking forward to all of the cursing in that TV series.
I hope it's going to be creative. I don't know. Americans are not going to be as creative as the English.
However, that said, The Veep had some pretty good
The
cursing.
Veep had great cursing, now that you've mentioned it. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so those are mine.
The Holdovers, The Holdovers has another great line. At one point, Paul Giamatti says to someone, I have known you from the time you were a young man, and I feel I can say this to you, but you are penis cancer in human form.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that is the best burn. And you know what? The construction of that line is absolutely fantastic because I was thinking about it, and I'm like, there is a decision process there. Why is it not cock cancer? Why is it not dick cancer? The choice of the word penis just works really, really well because it's clinical, it's academic.
For me, it's also the quantifying, right? I've known you since you were a young man. Yeah. It's not taking it for granted. This isn't a thing that has come to him by way of having met the guy the last 20 minutes. No. This is quantified.
Yeah, we're a big fan of creative cursing.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all the stuff that we've loved, we've hated, we've been surprised by, and we are looking forward to in the coming year. Yes, these first 6 months might be a little slow, but here's hoping the second half of the year picks up.
Yeah.
Let us know what your favorites are. Write in with your biggest surprises, biggest disappointments, favorite movies and TV shows, what you're most looking forward to in 24. You know how to reach out. All of our social media feeds are GogglerMY. You can also email us on podcast@goggler.my or send us a WhatsApp on the Goggler hotline, 012-524-5208. You can also talk to us on our Discord server. If you need to know how to get there, just drop us a DM on any one of our channels and we'll send you a link. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Goggler Podcast.